Selective Perception. We are reading from Media Control by Noam Chomsky. This has been going on for quite a while. In May 1986, the memoirs of the released Cuban prisoner Armando Valladares came out. They quickly became a media sensation. I will give you a couple of quotes. The media described his revelations as the definitive account of the vast system of torture and prison by which Castro punishes and obliterates political opposition. It was an inspiring and unforgettable account of the bestial prisons, inhuman torture, and record of state violence under yet another of this century's mass murderers who we learn at last from this book, has created a new despotism that has institutionalized torture as a mechanism to of social control in the hell that was the Cuba that Valadares lived in. There's the Washington Post and New York Times in repeated reviews. Castro was described as a dictatorial goon. His atrocities were revealed in this book so conclusively that only the most light headed and cold blooded Western intellectual will come to the tyrant's defense, said the Washington Post. Remember, this is the account of what happened to one man. Let's say it's all true. Let's raise one no questions about what happened to the man who says he was tortured. At a White House ceremony marking Human Rights Day, he was singled out by Ronald Reagan for his courage in enduring the horrors and sadism of this bloody Cuban tyrant. He was then appointed the US representative at the UN Human Rights Commission, where he was been able to perform signal services defending the Salvadoran and Guatemalan governments against charges that they conduct atrocities so massive that they make anything he suffered look pretty minor. That's the way things stand. That was May 1986. It was interesting and it tells you something about the manufacture of consent. The same month, the surviving members of human rights group of El Salvador, the leaders had been killed, were arrested and tortured, including Herbert Anaya, who was the director. They were sent to prison La Esperanza, which means hope prison. While they were in prison, they continued their human rights work. They were lawyers. They continued taking affidavits. There were 432 prisoners in that prison. They got signed affidavits from 430 of them in which they described under oath the torture that they had received, electoral torture, other torture by a North American US major in uniform who is described in same detail. This is an unusually explicit and comprehensive testimony, probably unique in its detail about what's going on in a torture chamber. This 160-page report of the prisoner's own testimony was sneaked out of prison along with a videotape which was taken showing people testifying in prison about their torture. It was distributed by the Marin County Interfaith Task Force. The national press refused to cover it. The TV stations refused to run it. There was an article in the local Marin County newspaper, the San Francisco Examiner, and I think that's all. No one else would touch it. This was a time when there was more than a few light-headed and cold-blooded Western intellectuals who were singing the praises of Jose Napoleon Duarte and of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan, Anaya was not the subject of any tributes. He didn't get on Human Rights Day. He wasn't appointed to anything. He was released in a prisoner exchange and then assassinated, apparently by the US backed security forces. Very little information about that ever appeared. The media never asked whether exposure of the atrocities instead of sitting on them and silencing them might have saved his life. This tells you something about the way a well functioning system of consent manufacturing works. This tells you something about the way a well functioning system of consent manufacturing works. In comparison with the revelations of Herbert Anaya in El Salvador, Valderas Memoirs are not even a plea next to the mountain, but you have got your job to do. That takes us toward the next war. I expect we are going to hear more and more of this until the next operation takes place. A few remarks about the last one. Let's turn finally to that. Let me begin with this University of Massachusetts study that I mentioned before. It has something interesting conclusions. In the study, people were asked whether they thought that the United States should intervene with force to reverse illegal occupation of serious human rights abuses. But about 2 to 1 people in the United States thought we should use force in the case of illegal occupation of land and severe human rights abuses. If the United States was to follow the advice, we would bomb El Salvador, Guatemala, Indonesia, Damascus, Tel Aviv, Cape Town, Turkey, Washington, and a whole list of other states. These are all cases of illegal occupation and aggression and severe human rights abuses. If you know the facts about the range of the examples, you will know very well that Saddam Hussein's aggression and atrocities fall well within the range. They are not the most extreme. Why doesn't anybody come to that conclusion? The reason is that nobody knows. In a well-functioning propaganda system, nobody would know what I am talking about when I list that range of examples. If you bother to look, you find that those examples are quite appropriate. Take one that was ominously close to being perceived during the Gulf War. In February, right in the middle of the bombing campaign, the government of Lebanon requested Israel to observe UN Security Council Resolution 425, which called on it to withdraw immediately and unconditionally from Lebanon. That resolution dates from March